Hi, this is Chef Jeremy from Kirkwood Community College. For today's session of Kirkwood's Culinary Demonstration Series, I will be fabricating a whole roundfish into 2 skinless, boneless fillets. First thing I want to do is select a flexible boning knife. You could use a rigid, but I like to flex to follow the contours of the bones, follow the contours of the protein itself. So once you have the right equipment, I have a tray of ice for sanitation purposes and soapy water and quat sani. And then fish-wise, what I'd like to do is, since I'm right-handed, start with that dorsal fin to my right, okay? Dorsal fin needs to be the right. If you're left-handed, dorsal fin needs to be on your left, okay? For this side, for this fillet, for this side, I'm gonna start at the head and come down the tail. The first incision that I'll make will be right behind the pectoral fin at a bit of an angle. I'll show you why here in 1 second. So the first incision's right behind the pectoral fin. I went at an angle because you can see if I went behind this pectoral fin and came straight down, I would lose all of that flesh right there. The next step would be to insert the tip of your knife just above the dorsal right here. And my goal here is to follow the rib bones all the way down to the tail, okay? So I'm just gonna take a ride and ride the rib bones all the way down to the tail and utilize the flex of the boning knife. Depending on the company that you source your fish from, sometimes they don't scale as well towards the fins. You can take the tip of your knife and scale it a little bit more if need be, right? Because you don't want your knife getting hung up on those scales. And you can see one scale popped off right here. But I want long, broad strokes. Try not to do any sawing. It's all right to use short strokes, especially as you're first starting out. Notice that the knife only inserts so far. How far is that? Maybe 1.25 inches? The knife is only inserted 1.25 inches. The reason being is I'm up against the spine bone in there. I've just followed the rib bones down. I need to get up and over the spine now. So that's the next step. So once I've followed the rib bones on down, and you can kind of see how close I got to those rib bones right there? My next step is to get up and over the spine. Once I expose that spine, I'll have you take a look. It's not that much of an obstacle. That first step I followed the rib bones down. Second step I got up and over the spine to expose it, okay? Now you can keep continuing on the other side of the ribs and take this fillet off right now, or you can do what I've been doing a little bit lately is keeping this this fillet on, flipping it over. That way the fish sits a little higher and it's not as awkward and indented on the cutting board. So on the second side, and I like to kind of dry the fish off a little bit so it doesn't slide too much on the cutting board. For the second side, make your incision up here by the tail. And it's the same principle. Let's get that knife started in between the rib bones and the flesh. And you can kind of cheat, take a peek in here, make sure you're on track. And again, long broad strokes. You notice I did a little bit of sawing here because I didn't want to get hung up on these dorsals because these dorsal fins are now facing my knife side as I come down. That looks good. Okay, let's make that same incision behind the pectoral fin. Add an angle once again, because recall on the other side, if I came behind the pectoral fin, came straight down, I'd lose a little bit of flesh. And remember the next step then is to get up and over the spine. So let me do that. Let me get up and over the spine, expose it, and then have you take a look. Okay, now you can kind of see those were those rib bones that I came down. And that's the spine, up and over the spine. And then here's a top view. Look how beautiful that's looking so far. Okay. Now let's go back to that original side. And let's take the fillets off. Up here by the collarbone, these bones sit a little bit higher. There's 4 or 5 bones up here that sit higher, so you kind of have to put your knife at an angle and come down. But once you're up and over that spine, you're home free. You can just continue to follow the contour of the ribs, utilizing the flex of your boning knife as you come down. Expose that fillet. Now, you can remove the belly right here in one shot, or you can take the belly off and trim the belly up here on the side if you'd like. Trim that later, that's fine, either way. All right, I just got a really nice clean fillet. Same thing with the other side. You need you to just follow the contours of the other side of the ribs all the way down. Keeping in mind that these bones up here by the collar sit a little higher, so you have to kind of go at an angle and get up and over those bones. And again, if you want to take the belly off in one shot with the carcass, you can. Or detach here and trim that belly up second, either way. See what I mean by these collarbones that sit a little higher? You can see I had to get my knife at more of an angle up here. With this carcass, you can save it and make fish stock out of a round fish. I find that some of the flat fish, like a halibut or a fluke or a flounder, are a little more delicate flavor and lend themselves better to fish stock than this round fish. And this one isn't too oily though, so it'll make decent fish stock. But for my money, I tend to make shrimp stock when I utilize any type of seafood stock. All right, let's go ahead and trim belly. Trim that belly up just a little bit. Discard that. And now for the skinning. This is where a lot of people get in a little bit of trouble. It can be difficult at first, but I'll try to show you a way that makes sense. What you need to do is start with the tail, okay? Start with the tail towards you. Insert that knife so it's right between the skin and the flesh, right? Let's get it started and let's get a tag going. See that tag I created? That gives me something to hold on to. Hold tight. Hold tight with your left hand. Flex your knife. Keep that knife on the board and go at a back and forth action. And it's perfectly skinned. Let me show you that one more time without the actual fillet in the way, okay? Hold down that tail with one finger, get it started, get in between the skin and the flesh, right? Once you've created the tag and you have something to grab onto, go ahead and grab onto it. Hold tight with that hand, all right? And as you move, look at the flex of the knife, and the knife is always touching the board. What people want to do, they get halfway through and they think they're home free, but then they start pulling up on the knife and rip through the meat itself. So continue on through, just a back and forth motion, that flesh will come right off. Also notice one other thing, the angle that I'm using is very, very flat. People, their other mistake, they tend to angle that knife too much as they skin it. And if you angle the knife too much, you're gonna rip right through the skin itself. And then you have to start over somehow. And that's typically not terribly easy. All right, other side. Remember, tail, get it started. Just hold it down with a finger. I mean, you sacrificed a tiny bit of meat, not much. Get it started. Once you have a tag that you can hold on to, just hold tight. Just a little bit of a back and forth motion, but you're holding tight and you're moving away from yourself. Your perfectly skinned fillet. So as you're going back and forth, you're also pushing away from yourself. You're holding tight with the other hand, with your left hand. You're moving away from yourself with the right hand. Knife always on the board. Knife flex, that's why I like to use the flex knife when doing fish. Last step here will be to remove the pin bones. I use just a needle nose plier, since it's such a small fish. Some of the fish pliers that they sell have a kind of a flat nose, which are good for things like salmon, where the fish is bigger and the bone's more exposed. The 4 or 5 pin bones live at the collar end. So just take your finger or your thumb, see the bloodline? See how this line right here is darker? Go from the bloodline from its head to its tail and just kind of pet it a little bit. And that should raise up the bones. If you can kind of see them raising up. So once they're raised, you can go ahead and pull them. See the striations of the flesh itself right here? That is nature telling you which way to pull these bones out. So the striations are going this way, pull that way. Now they're pretty small bones, but I do believe a customer would notice if they were in there. Okay, so let's do a double check and a triple check to make sure we got all those bones. And you can see them right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bones on that fillet. Same thing with the other side. Let's start with the collar. Follow that bloodline down and you can feel them. There's 3, 4, 5 in there maybe. I don't think that one was one. All right, double check, triple check, make sure you got them all. It does chew up the meat slightly. So one alternative would be to, on such a small fish, or for you, if you were out fishing with your family, cleaning fish, you can just take your knife and cut that whole section out. I mean, you're not sacrificing that much meat. But for the purposes of culinary school, let's go ahead and pull those bones, set them to the side, and present some beautiful looking skinless fillets. Pin bone out, skinned, and that's it. Thanks for watching.